She was unconscious on the floor of one of the most powerful buildings in Chicago. I didn't know who she was. I didn't care. All I knew was that she was alone. She was burning up with fever, and the blizzard outside was getting worse by the minute. So I did what anyone should do. I took her home. 3 days later, there was a knock at my door, and the woman standing on my porch, the woman I'd carried out of that building, looked me dead in the eyes and said 6 words I'll never forget. "My father wants to see you." Now, you have to understand something. Her father wasn't just some protective dad checking in on his daughter. Her father was Richard Hale, the man who built an empire from nothing, the man whose name was on the building I cleaned every night, a man who had ruined careers, toppled companies, and buried lawsuits without blinking. And he wanted to see me, a night janitor, a single dad from Aurora, a man with nothing. I had no idea what I was walking into, but what happened next, inside that estate, changed everything. Let me back up. My name is Ethan Brooks. I'm 34 years old. I work the night shift cleaning offices in downtown Chicago. Have been doing it for 3 years. Ever since my wife, Claire, died. Pancreatic cancer. 11 months from diagnosis to gone. She was 31. I don't say that for sympathy. I say it so you understand who I am. After Claire died, I had 2 things left. My daughter, Lily, she was 3 at the time, and a stack of hospital bills that took me 2 years to pay off. I had to sell the car we'd bought together, downsize from our apartment to a smaller house in Aurora, and figure out how to be a father and a mother at the same time. Night shifts made sense. Lily could sleep while I worked. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, 72 years old and fiercer than most people half her age, would stay over and be there if Lily woke up. I'd be home by 4 a.m. most nights, get a few hours of sleep, take Lily to school, sleep again, repeat. I cleaned the 78th floor of Hale Group headquarters 3 nights a week. Executive suites, conference rooms, the kind of carpet that costs more per square foot than my monthly rent. Nobody noticed me. Nobody was supposed to. I was invisible. That's the job. I'd gotten good at disappearing into backgrounds, at not making eye contact with the people who stayed late, at existing in the margins of a world I'd never belonged to. My whole life was built around 2 things, keeping the lights on and keeping Lily safe. I didn't have room for complications, couldn't afford them. 1 missed shift, 1 unexpected bill, 1 bad month, and everything I'd carefully built could collapse. That's who I was on the night of the blizzard. A man with a mop and a 6-year-old at home and exactly 0 margin for error. And then I found her, but I had no idea how bad it was about to get. It was 2:47 a.m. I remember checking my watch because I'd finished the south wing early, and I was trying to calculate whether I could make it home before the storm got worse. The 78th floor was empty, the executive suites dark. The city was barely visible through the windows, just gray curtains of snow pressing against the glass. And then I saw her. She was crumpled beside the executive elevators, 1 shoe off, black dress soaked through with melted snow. She'd clearly come in from somewhere and made it this far, and then her body gave out. My first instinct was to back away. Every cell in my brain was screaming, "This is not your problem. Call security. File a report." Worth it. Because you have to understand, getting involved meant getting noticed. Questions. Risk. The possibility of losing the one job that kept my daughter fed and housed. But then she made a sound. Just a small one. Tried to push herself up off the marble floor. Her arms gave out. I thought about Lily. About the thing I tell her every time we walk past someone struggling. Even if you're scared, sweetheart. Especially if you're scared. I walked over. Her eyes were unfocused. Fever heat was radiating through her suit jacket. I crouched down. "I'm going to help you up." She couldn't stand on her own. When I mentioned calling security, her hand shot out and grabbed my arm with surprising strength. No security. My father, he can't. Her grip went slack. I stood there for a moment in that empty hallway, the storm hammering the windows. A woman who'd specifically begged me not to call for help collapsed at my feet. I thought about what it meant to take her home. I thought about what it meant not to. I made my choice. I wrapped my jacket around her, used the service elevator, swiped my employee card at the garage level, and settled her in the front seat of my 15-year-old sedan. Cranked the heat as high as it would go, scraped the windshield with numb fingers. At the garage exit, I paused. Once I drove through that gate, there was no turning back. Her name was stitched into her visitor badge, the one clipped crookedly to her lapel. Victoria Hale. I'd been cleaning her family's building for 3 years, and never once crossed paths with the woman whose name was on every door. I drove into the storm. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. Not just for me, but for both of us. The next 6 weeks were quiet at first. Victoria recovered. I drove her back to the city the morning after the storm. She tried to pay me. I refused. She tried to thank me. I told her there was nothing to thank. It was just the right thing to do. She came back. 3 days later, then again the week after. She'd knock on the door at 7 p.m. with no entourage, no driver waiting out front. Just her. In my kitchen, eating leftovers, listening to Lily talk about her class project with the same focus a CEO brings to a board presentation. I didn't name what was happening. Neither did she. And then the pressure started. First, my rent increased $300. Market adjustment, my landlord said. Legal. Sudden. The timing felt deliberate. Then Lily's school called. There were concerns. About family stability. About supervision. About my fitness as a single parent. Mrs. Chen came to that meeting and practically set the room on fire with her response. But the principal wouldn't tell us who filed the complaint. Then my car broke down after a shift. Brake line. The mechanic said it looked like it had been tampered with. I sat in that cold garage and felt the walls closing in. Not because someone was attacking me directly. Richard Hale was far too sophisticated for duh. But someone in his circle had understood that quiet, targeted inconvenience could do what open confrontation couldn't. The message was unmistakable. You exist at our sufferance. I called Victoria. It's your father, she said. Her voice was tight with something between anger and guilt. He creates pressure. He watches how people respond. If they break, he moves on. If they hold, I'm not interested in earning a billionaire's respect through an endurance test, I said. But I didn't break. I adjusted the budget. I defended my parenting calmly and completely. I had the car repaired and went back to work. I sat alone in my living room at midnight, Lily asleep upstairs, and I finally understood what I was dealing with. No one was coming to save me. I had to save myself. I'm not a strategic man. I don't play chess. I don't plot, but I am a patient one. I decided I wasn't going to fight. I wasn't going to hide. I wasn't going to ask Victoria to intervene, because that would only prove to her father that I was leveraging the connection, exactly what he suspected. Instead, I just kept living my life. Week by week, quietly, methodically. I kept showing up to work, kept taking Lily to school, kept having Victoria over for dinner when she wanted to come, without apology and without hiding it. When the media found that parking lot photo, Victoria laughing, my hand on her arm, casual and real, and the headlines started calling me a mystery man, a building maintenance worker, a gold digger. I didn't call a lawyer. I didn't give interviews. I made pancakes and helped Lily with her homework and let the noise be noise. Mrs. Chen brought lemonade to the porch one afternoon and said, "You know what you're doing, don't you?" I said I was just not letting fear make my decisions. She nodded, like that was the most sensible thing she'd ever heard. Victoria called me one night after the board started making noise about her position, her image, her choices. She sounded exhausted, stretched thin. I asked her what she actually wanted. Not what the board wanted. Not what her father thought. What she wanted. She was quiet for a long moment. "I want to keep coming to your house," she said. "I want to keep sitting at your kitchen table and feeling like a person." "Then we don't step back," I said. "We hold steady." She asked how I could be so calm. I wasn't calm. I was furious, scared for Lily, worried about money and reputation and what tomorrow would bring. But I'd survived harder things than a billionaire's disapproval. And I had a feeling, just a feeling, that something was shifting. They had no idea what was coming. 6 weeks after the night of the storm, I got a call. Not from Victoria, from Richard Hale himself. "Mr. Brooks, my daughter tells me you've been waiting for me to make the next move. She's right. Come to the estate tonight, 7 o'clock. I wore the only suit I owned, the one from my wife's funeral. I drove to a property with iron gates and a circular driveway and a Georgian house that looked like it belonged in a different century. A man in a dark suit opened the door before I could knock. Richard Hale was exactly what I expected. Sharp eyes, silver hair, the particular stillness of a man who's never had to rush because the world waits for him. He sat behind a mahogany desk the size of a small boat and studied me the way a jeweler studies a stone he suspects might be fake. He asked me to tell him everything, so I did. I told him about the hallway floor, the fever, the panic in Victoria's eyes when I mentioned calling security. I told him about the drive through the storm, about Mrs. Chen opening the door without a single question, about Lily watching from the doorway in her star pajamas the next morning. When I finished, the room was silent except for the fire. "What do you want from this situation?" he asked. "Nothing. Everyone wants something, Mr. Brooks. Money, access, status. I want to keep doing my job and raising my daughter. That's all." He leaned forward. "You took a billionaire to your home while she was incapacitated. You must understand how that looks to people like me." "I understand how it looks," I said. "I also understand that your daughter was sick and scared, and alone on a cold floor, during a dangerous storm. In that moment, what it looked like mattered less than what was right." He studied me for a long time. Then he said, quietly, "Do you know what I could do to you? To your job? Your daughter's school? Your life?" "Yes," I said. "But that doesn't change what happened, and it doesn't change that I'd make the same choice again." And then the room went completely silent. Richard Hale stood, walked to the window, looked out at his snow-covered grounds for what felt like a full minute. When he turned back, there was something different in his face. Not softness exactly, but recognition. "My daughter speaks highly of you," he said. "That's rare." He wasn't threatening me anymore. He was telling me the truth. That was the moment the power shifted. Not with lawyers or headlines or board meetings, just two men in a room, and one of them choosing honesty over strategy, and the other one finally, respecting it. 3 months later, snow had melted. Crocuses were pushing up through the dirt in my front yard. The photographers had moved on. The media had found someone else to chase. I was still at Hale Group, but in facilities management now, with better hours, better pay, and a seat on an employee advocacy initiative Richard had personally created. He put me there not as charity, but because he said my perspective was worth paying for. I almost turned it down. Of course I did. But Victoria just looked at me across my kitchen table and said, "Don't be stubborn about this one, Ethan." On a Saturday in early April, the three of us planted tulips in the front yard. Lily directed the whole operation with the authority of someone who has very specific opinions about where things should go. Victoria had her expensive shoes off and dirt on her jacket. Richard texted that evening, "Family dinner next Sunday. Bring Lily. No excuses." 6 months earlier, that sentence would have been absurd. That morning it just felt true. I don't know what the future holds. I'm not naive enough to think wealth and worlds that different don't create friction. They do. But I know this much. That night, I made the human choice. And sometimes, that's the only choice that matters.